Trust is an infrastructure. It's like highways. It's like electrical grids. It's like energy facilities, right? Either you own them or somebody owns them for you, right? So there's a lot of hype of AI, which is hiding the real problem. We are in quantum what we were in AI 5 years ago. We say that in the next 10 years, organizations are going to be big corporations, big tech companies. They're going to be judged not by the money they make, but the goodness they create. This is the last generation that is going to be able to take the right decisions. I mean, if you have a young kid now with 5 years, 6 years old, in 20 years' time, that kid will be in trouble if we are not taking the right decisions now in making technology safe to humans, right?
Welcome to a new episode of the Quantum Economy Podcast. Today we're talking about trust, but not as an abstract idea, but as critical infrastructure in a world shaped by quantum technology. My guest is Carlos Moreira, founder and CEO of WISeKey and SEALSQ. For more than 3 decades, Carlos has been working in cybersecurity with digital identities and technological sovereignty, with his early work at the United Nations to now building global technology companies. In our conversation, we explore post-quantum security and why trust needs to be built into the architecture of our digital future. This is the Quantum Economy Podcast with Carlos Moreira. Yeah, so Carlos, first of all, thank you for coming on. And we're going to talk about trust. And we just wrapped up the World Economic Forum, and you've been there, I think you told me in the previous conversation, since 1989. You're a veteran. I would be curious, how do you see the topic of trust this year, starting off with just a fresh memory from the Swiss Alps?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me, by the way. So trust this year is actually especially important because it has been combined with sovereignty. Sovereign technology means that, the internet is decoupling now by verticals. So every country wants to have ownership of the critical technology that before was kind of globalized. And now countries are saying, no, we want to have our own encryption, our own post-quantum technology, our own quantum technology. We want to have our own constellation of satellite in the space because the world is what it is, right? I mean, every country is now bunkerizing themselves into technology silos. And this is actually not a good idea, but at the same time, this is a defense idea. You need to do it, right? Otherwise, if you depend on technology from another country and the other country has a dispute with you on whatever dispute, they can block you. Basically, they can stop your economy, right? As technology has become so ubiquitous in everything we do. So that's the new trend. I think it's also an opportunity because maybe we lost a bit the survival instinct by just trusting 2 or 3 companies in the world. Obviously, we need to decentralize. One of my major points in Davos is that Europe needs to build the next $1 trillion company in order to be taken seriously. We cannot just become small pieces then get acquired by American or Chinese companies. We need to have our own autonomy. We have the ecosystem. We have 450 million people in Europe. So we could build very large companies. But as the European Union boss say, Europe is fragmented. So you have to go country by country, language by language, culture by culture before you can create critical mass. And that takes a long time, right? So we need to create the same effect of having 450 million consumers, then they are immediately available to European companies to maximize their growth capability.
But is this an ambition then that we don't trust technology, or is it that we do not trust ourselves as human beings?
Yeah, I think it has been a convenience type of situation at the beginning. You just use technology because it's convenient. You use the latest iPhone, the latest app, the latest computer, the latest laptop, and you don't pay too much attention on what kind of dependency this is creating. Talent in Europe is actually very big. I mean, all the innovation like semiconductors were invented in Europe. Europe had at the time laptop computers in Italy, Olivetti, and in England. Europe was also one of the first in developing quantum capabilities. But because we cannot scale, because we are always unable to raise the late stage funding, which is available in the United States, we are in a situation that we get acquired, right? So companies like SEALSQ is thinking totally differently. We go to the NASDAQ, we create $1 billion markup, and then we come to Europe, and then we consolidate by acquiring company. But it's an European company going to the NASDAQ, creating the American size of companies, and then go back again to Europe to invest in European ecosystem. So that's why we are booming, and others never scale.
I want to get into SEALSQ and also WISeKey and your companies, and also talk a little bit more about the capital markets and having free cash flow to scale. But I would also be very curious a little bit about your background, since you are you said 1989. You talk about digital trust for many decades now. I would say you're the man behind digital trust, so to speak. What pulled you into this space? You also had a background with the UN, and you've been very deeply drawn to the whole aspect of technological or digital trust. We're just curious how that journey was for you.
So my background is a bit different, because as an entrepreneur now, obviously I am doing IPOs on his layer. But before I was working on security with the UN, and I was in Geneva. Geneva is a very specific city on the history on the internet, because the web was invented here, right? The World Wide Web was invented by CERN, and CERN is in the border between Geneva and France. And the web was the first technology innovation that decentralized data and knowledge around the world. Before the web, things were sitting on silos, right? Nobody have access to anything, and it was so expensive, and only an elite have access. So the web democratized data, and then it was so easy with just a hyperlinked environment to connect data in India, in China, and the United States. So that was a revolution. But I was on the core of the technology. So we actually built the core, the what you call the core zero, which is the first node that the web used was actually in Geneva, and it was used by the United Nations. And I was in the UN at that time on the same data centers. So we at that time we realized that although the web was an amazing way to decentralize data, it was a very lousy technology for verticalizing trust. Horizontal, amazing, but then verticalization doesn't play on that architecture. And the reason is that the web was invented by scientists, right? Physicians, so they didn't have any trust consideration. For them was make it easy, make it accessible. So at that time, then we realized that the web doesn't understand digital identities. The web doesn't know what a human is. The web doesn't respect private data. So we just extrapolated that and say, wow, if this grows exponentially in the next 30 years, 40 years, there's going to be a major problem, right? Because the trust has not been injected into the technology. So all my work was to do that, to verticalize the web, to provide cryptography root keys at national level, to let countries to issue their own identities under their control, making sure that you don't depend on another country to have your citizens connected. So that has been my fight in the UN. Then I realized that the UN was not necessarily the best environment to do that, because it's a very political environment, right? So I said, okay, I have to go to the private sector, and I'm going to do it in the private sector. And I created WISeKey. It was in 1999 in Geneva when I left the UN. So in 98, in the last 60 years before I was in the UN, and for 99, I was in the private sector. And then I tried to develop that verticalization trust model, because trust is an intangible asset. It's very hard to code trust, right? How you code trust in the architecture is an intangible asset, and it needs to be embedded into the core and into the code. Otherwise, nobody will take you serious, right? So that's why we created WISeKey as the first European cryptography root key. So that was like RSA, VeriSign, Entrust, all these American companies. So we have an alternative, which was WISeKey. And that was a huge success, because the market really started to realize that trust is local and security is global, right? But trust is local. You cannot globalize trust. You have to apply that on local level first.
But you see that then trust as an infrastructure, right? So, that's the layer. It's not a feature on top of something. It's kind of sort of like roads and grids and financial systems that we need a digital trust as a critical infrastructure of society. Is that now your drive to be a technologist, an entrepreneur? Is it a capital driver? Or do you see yourself like kind of sort of as a guardian of that digital future civilization? So taking that, you mentioned the UN was not the right place to build that infrastructure layer. So you are kind of sort of then, quote unquote, using the capital markets to go after your vision of a safe digital civilization.
Absolutely. Trust is an infrastructure. It's like highways. It's like electrical grids. It's like energy facilities, right? Either you own them or somebody owns them for you, right? So my vision was that because I am Swiss, I live in Switzerland, and Switzerland is a good country to create a digital trust model. We say, okay, we're going to build the trust infrastructure from Switzerland to the world. And there's where, we started as a startup. WISeKey was a very tiny company, then got very big. I then started to follow the traditional growth processing company, bring into the Swiss stock market first with a $360 million market. Then 3 years later, I went to the NASDAQ. We were the first technology company in Switzerland in the NASDAQ after Logitech many years ago. So I showed the Swiss innovation sector, then you could go to the NASDAQ with a trust company, and that will be actually a good financial opportunity as well. So from there, once I was on the NASDAQ, I obviously invested more in the technology then because trust applies not only to encryption, applies to cloud, sovereign cloud, applies to data centers, applied to energy, applies to cryptographic, now actually applied to AI, how you train AI under a trusted LLM environment, and also applies to quantum and post-quantum technology, so what we call the vertical stack, right? So I started to invest in companies and acquire companies that they were working on that verticalization. And the vision was always the same. I want to create a vertical stack that goes from the root, trust, all the way down into the semiconductor or into the quantum computer. And that has been the success of the group. Now we are about $2 billion group. So we have 2 listed companies. SEALSQ is a $1 billion company on the NASDAQ. Growing into, the competition there is companies like IonQ, Rigetti, D-Wave, then they are around $16-20 billion company with less revenue than we have. So we are catching up on that level of valuation. With that, we are raising a lot of money. We raised $500 million this year. With that money, we actually acquiring company. We acquired 2 companies in France, and we are injecting something like $300 million in the French technology because France invented the semiconductor, right? And it was very hard for them to scale up. French company has not been able neither to scale up. So we are helping them to become much bigger and go into the NASDAQ and create what I believe is going to be one of the largest companies in Europe, from Switzerland, but to the rest of Europe in the fourth industrial revolution, which is where we are now, where trust is very important. For first time, trust is valued. Before, trust was, who care about trust? I want just to sell my product. Now trust is being embedded into the procurements, into the decision-making process. Politicians are now using the word trust and human, right? Trust and human. Another aspect of it is developing technology that is human-friendly, that they are not going to displace us. In Davos, I show a Wise robot, and everybody was amazed, success. Everybody was coming to see the Wise robot. And wise because we change all the electronics into the robot, so the robot will not harm a human, right? And that this is the kind of spirit. Whatever we develop in terms of technology, it should be human friendly and should guarantee that this technology is not detrimental to humanity, right? Because this is the last generation that is going to be able to take the right decisions. I mean, if you have a young kid now with 5 years, 6 years old, in 20 years' time, that kid will be in trouble if we are not taking the right decisions now in making technology safe to humans, right? Which is not the case now, right? And that is something that is all responsibilities. And this is what gives me focus and interest in this, is that we need to make sure that whatever happens in the next 5 years, which are going to be critical years, we will keep humanity safe from hostile technology.
Yeah, I want to get into the human aspect because it's something that I've written at length about, what actually is a human being and what can be engineered. But just staying with the trust topic, If you look at the economy, and I think this was also the dialogues in Davos, what happens then? And you said the next couple of years, it seems like there is a much bigger topic also that institutions, and you look at the US, that some of these institutions are collapsing. The structures of the old world, the old economy is collapsing because there is no human trust. Do you think that we can engineer then trust? Or is it also a cultural or a human phenomenon factor that is just as critical as just the technological aspect of it? In particular, now that we look at the role that the economy, you mentioned, your necessity to raise capital and to scale. What do you think about this in this world over the next years? Do you think that we can engineer trust back into the systems? And do you think there are severe implications for the economy based on the geopolitical tensions and the things that we are seeing?
So yeah, so absolutely, and this is a very important question. The consensus in Davos with all the CEOs and technologies is that the next 3 years until what you call the Q day, right, the quantum day, the day that quantum computers are able to break RSA, which is a 50 years old crypto developed by MIT, and it's the RSA triple des, and these cryptos are the foundation of the entire economy. Bitcoins are based on their encryption, the financial system, the banks, the hospital, the airports, the government, the cities, the defense departments, all that is based on RSA. Until now, we managed to survive a major attack or a major crisis because RSA have done a very good job. But that was based on the old infrastructure in the old computational generation of supercomputers, and they need huge data centers, a lot of GPUs, like companies like NVIDIA, and that was the power that this data centers and technology gave to the to those algorithms. But this has been compromisable now. A quantum is arriving, right? Quantum computer, actually, SEALSQ is developing its own quantum computer in cooperation with Kubli and other French companies and SEALSQ, because in 2830, a quantum computer will have enough qubits to break RSA. We are saying that it's about 10 million qubits. It's a race on qubits. Who can generate more qubits and faster? And there are two philosophies, is that you can do that with ion stabilization. There are others, like this, or approach is actually training the semiconductor itself to become more powerful, so you can reach a quantum core that will be around 10 million qubits, that breaks RSA. But whoever wins 2830 is Q day, right? And that's why the United States government and the European government and Japan and others are launching initiatives that they are designed to train the industry towards that risk. So they are saying, the CNSA 2.0 in the United States basically says, but from the federal agencies, saying you have to be quantum resilient by the year 2027. And by the year 2030, if you are not, your system is going to be classified as a legacy system, a dangerous system. You will not be able to use it anymore. So there is a race and that's why our companies are booming, right? Because we have semiconductor technology that solve that problem. So this is not like a new technology coming, like a new cloud or this is actually the fundamental infrastructure that is going to change. And because everything else is based on that legacy infrastructure, governments, trust models, that is going to have a massive impact, right? Because everybody has to rethink their processes. A bank will have to rethink their governance. A government will have to see how they delegate authority and trust over the fourth industrial revolution. So we are in that moment that some countries are kind of denial. That's nothing's going to happen to us. Everything is going to be okay. And others like Switzerland, the United States, and maybe also at a certain level in Europe now, they're saying, no, we really have to start to seriously think about this and start to create a resilient infrastructure, so we will be able to continue growing after the arrival of quantum computers. So quantum computer has a dark side, is that one that they can break everything, but it has also a very positive side that quantum computers will be able to do things that we are unable to do now, like solving cancer or finding new materials.
Carlos, just a
Yeah.
bit pause a little bit on the security part. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with various players in the post quantum cryptography space with various approaches, also technically. But I always wonder, man, there is a lot of conversation going on in that space right now. But don't you see governments and corporations underestimating how urgent it is to implement? And also, what are the misconceptions that these players might have of post quantum security? Because when you talk at the Q Day, and we have various views and also the various approaches to building a quantum computer, we've had many of the founders on the podcast in previous episodes. But you talk about 2028, 2029, 2030. I mean, that's just around the corner. So I would just be curious about if everyone is screaming this timeline, we know the implications. Why, as it seems, are corporations, governments still underestimating the impact of this technology?
The main reason is because money is still on AI. And this is like an obsession about AI, right? So everybody is like, what I call AI washing, right? Everybody is AI. Everybody wants to add an AI layer in whatever they do. And 99% of those applications are not even AI, right? They are just using somebody else's AI to data mine and develop some kind of application. So it's a lot of hype of AI, which is hiding the real problem. We are in quantum what we were in AI 5 years ago, right? So that means that slowly, and this was one of my objectives in Davos, is to shift the narrative from AI to quantum, because quantum is much more important than AI. I mean, in any case, AI will be amazing with quantum because quantum computational capability will speed up AI, will boost AI, right? AI with quantum will reach easily AGI status. But the problem is an infrastructure. So, for instance, a lot of people they are investing in massive data centers and buying nuclear reactors for electricity. Obviously, they are not yet willing to even talk about quantum because quantum contradicts that model. I mean, a quantum computer doesn't need a massive data center, a quantum computer doesn't need so much electricity. So investments that they are going into AI and AI-related industries might be in contradiction to what you need to do in case that you want to build a resilient quantum infrastructure. But in the other side, I think what I was happy to see is that the concept of quantum security is actually coming very strong. Actually, this year has been nominated the year of quantum security. So what is quantum security? Is exactly that. Is telling countries and institutions that there will be a risk the day that a quantum computer arrives to go into the post-quantum cryptographic enhancement and develop themselves alternatives. What is going to happen? I mean, it's not because a quantum computer is going to arrive in 28, 30. IBM in my roundtable say it will be 28 already. Let's say that it's 20 or 30. It's not because that happens that we are in trouble, because obviously a serious and a reputable company is not going to break anybody encryption, right? I hope that the quantum computers, then they will arrive, they are in the hands of wise people, right? And not in rogue countries or terrorists. So that means that quantum computers will also become subject to regulations like we have, for instance, in atomic industry, right? Or what you can export, to where you can export, dual use technology. All those things will need to be injected into this industry, which is emerging ahead of us. But what is clear is that the quantum computers are going to be very dangerous if we don't solve. And the moment that you will have a major problem like, electrical infrastructure being compromised by a quantum attack, or a industrial or a Bitcoin being compromisable, everybody will run after. I mean, humans normally we react after the problem and not before the problem, but it's going to happen for sure.
But that's the reaction, trial and error of the past will not be the model of the future, right? So, I mean, here it seems like it's an existential threat, or it's the only path to safeguard society. So it's kind of sort of a binary in that sense, right? What do you think will break first? Will it be finance? Will it be governments? Will it be the individual identity? What are the biggest risks that you see? Is our personal privacy at stake, or is it more the system in terms of financial systems or governments breaking down? What is your take on that?
The our observation will be the first attacks will be where the money is, right, and where they can make more money. That will be cryptocurrencies for sure. And we had several panels with Hedera and many crypto companies that they are all very concerned, right, about the potential. I mean, if in 3 years' time somebody breaks one of them, doesn't need to be all of them, that will collapse the entire market, because the trust will disappear. And that's all about trust, right? When you don't trust anymore something, you don't invest on it, right? So that will be the financial system. I think it will have another dimension of it, is that you can, with quantum computing capability, you can train AI for hostile things, right? I mean, for instance, you can create LLMs based on dark web data and create a very hostile and nasty AI that will have a very powerful computational capabilities, right? So that could compromise people, could basically exponentially create fake news and basically destroy the very already thin line we have between something which is truth or not truth. I mean, we are in a truth deficit society now. We don't know anymore what is real, what is fake, right? And that will be accelerated by this computational capability. So those are, I would say, the sector. Obviously, then everything which is government identity to do a binding transaction, whether it's e-banking, e-voting, paying your tax online, that needs to be secure, right? Because if somebody, there's a lot of discussion in Davos about agentic AI, but agentic AI, if it's somebody compromise your identity, it can take decisions for you that you're not aware of it, and that has a very big consequences. One there, quantum computers will arrive, right? So we need to fix a lot of problems before that happens, and that's why I think. Say again?
And who owns the identity then? Do you think it should be the individual? Is it at the state level, or is it like a decentralized network? So I mean, because I think we talk about a digital identity and the necessity for such, is it still then the realm of the person, the individual, or is it become a layer on the network?
I have been working on an identity for over 30 years, right? I remember I was one of the pioneers on identity. And my take on the identity is that a digital identity is the equivalent of your birth certificate the day you enter the internet. So, if you have a birth certificate, which is the base document to get your identity card, your passport, or whatever, when you get married, you have to show your birth certificate, right? So that's what an identity is. Does not belong to anybody. It belongs to you under your consent as a human. And where you store that identity, ideally in a decentralized structure, in a ledger, a blockchain ledger. So you don't store your identity in a database, because once you do that, somebody obviously can hack your identity. So you would rather put that in a ledger. And that is in contradiction with the Web 2.0 economy, which has been more or less, we take care of your identity. Don't worry. We're going to put inside Facebook or X or whatever social media platform, and we take care of your identity and your data. You saw the abuses of that, right? So the Web 3.0 has technology that is much more, I would say, human-centric and personal-centric, because you can put that identity in a ledger. That means that even a quantum computer will not be able to break it, because quantum computer will break a database, but not individual ledgers, right? They will not be able to go ledger by ledger and break identity by identity. And if identity is under your consent and ownership, and you are the one deciding where you store it, then identity has an economic value for you. I just came from India, with a company, Geo company, which are providing $20 mobile phones for very poor people, which are unbanked people. They don't even have a bank account. And they are issuing an identity that they store in the mobile phone only, so nowhere else. And with that person can trade, can get paid, can enter into the digital economy, right? So that's the model that I am defending. Obviously, that is a big fight, because the companies that they make trillions of dollars in the revenue, they are actually data mining your identity, So obviously they will, and actually that is very dangerous, because with the arrival of AI, that capability of data mining your data is becoming even exponential. They will be even more able to data mine that data to the point that we'll be able to go and get close to your PII, which is your personally identifiable information, which is something that you should never disclose anywhere. I mean, this is who you are, where you live, where your kids are. So that data should always encrypted under your control in a ledger with your own cryptographic key, which is owned by the person and not the platform. So this is it could be viewed as an idealistic vision, but that's what builds trust, right? That means that my Swiss identity when I go to France still works because it's interoperability between both countries, similar to what you have with GSM agreement with your mobile phone, right? I don't have to go another country and get another mobile phone relation. I do that because I have a rummy agreement between those mobile phones. Trust is local, as I mentioned before. Security is global and usage is global. But the identity layer, because it was never thought before on the web, is still a big problem that is not going to be ready to be solved because there are powerful interests both at the government's levels that they want to control identities and at the industry level and they want to monetize the identity that makes it nearly impossible to move identities into the Web 3.0 generation, which is where they belong. Identity belong into the Web 3.0 and not into the Web 2.0 for sure.
No, sure. I mean, but it more becomes like a digital feudalism. I mean, and basically, you could look at why do you need passports? I mean, if the identity is then stored, I mean, is that the new border? And if you look at the tech stack sitting in the US or in China or these big players, you know, what purpose is there for small countries then? Because your identity and the data is not sovereign to the state level. So you boil it down to the individual level, and then your digital identity becomes your passport, so to speak. And the old model of thinking of countries, it just kind of sort of loses its value to some extent, because you talked about trust being local and identity being global. The whole layer, cultural layer, or the dependency on the country then becomes obsolete, because you have to have your own sole local identity and interdependencies, but you are part of a global ecosystem. And if these large corporations are the data stack in the US or China, then obviously these powerhouses changes also the dynamics of how we operate as a society. Do you see that this could also be a development for particularly for some of the smaller countries that become much more individualism and much more global interdependency? So culture becomes much more local to a city or a village level, like going back in history to that, small tribe, and then this global identity. Is that something that you can also see changing?
Yeah, I mean, as in order to define identity, it's like an object identity. We also put identity into objects, and there are 7 trillion objects to be connected to the internet. An identity is not your passport, it's not your credit card, it's not your social number. It is an identity. I am human, okay? I belong to the human ecosystem during my lifetime. And during that lifetime, because I am a human, I want to participate into the digital economy, but I want to have control. The consent is what is important in the identity. If you invite somebody to dinner in your house, you give the consent to come in one night and dinner in your house, but not every night from there on. You don't expect that person to knock your house and say, sorry, I got dinner again, right? So the consent can be provided and then retrieve it back because you control that consent. If your identity is owned by you, you have access to that consent. You control that consent. If somebody has it for you, you lost that consent. That platform is the one that has the consent. So the consent mechanism is very important in identity. The second one is that you can aggregate what you call attributes to that identity. So the passport is not an identity, it's an attribute to that identity. It means with my identity, I can travel to another country and I have a passport for doing that. If you have 2 passports, you have 2 attributes, you don't have 2 identities, right? If you have 2 nationalities, you have 2 attributes, which is the nationality attached to your identity. The bank account is the same thing. If you have a bank account, it's an attribute, but it's not an identity. If I lose my credit card relation, I still exist. I still can do other things. or if I single sign on into many platforms and then I want to remove myself from Facebook or X, I can still use my identity somewhere else, and not as it is the case now. If you use single sign-on with one of the social media identity, the day then you want to retrieve that back, you cannot, and you disappear because you have no relation anymore with the platform. So this is it is a mistake we made in the Web 2.0 that is actually consequential, right? Because that changes the way countries will operate in the future.
But
Now, countries.
I would be curious then, if we put the trust into the identity then, and we look at these larger players, right? When we kind of sort of make trust programmable, which is a huge responsibility, because there are two options: either the AI with a quantum computer and some algorithms and foundation and world models generates an ethical framework for humanity, so that technology becomes the provider of an ethical framework, or there are someone that has to program these trust layers and define what we have as a base criteria. And if the tech players, larger corporations, then the question is not on a state level or smaller countries. It's more about a question then who puts the values into the code. Is it then the large corporates that has incentives for economic growth? Or is it a global governance, or is there a base criteria, or do we leave it over to AI to figure out humanism and ethics? I think this is a very interesting, deep question that also needs.
It has to be grassroots process. It cannot be a paternalistic process that somebody decides for you and trusts for you and define the trust mechanism. I was talking with the United Nations Commission on Human Rights, which is a very well-defined, which protects human rights, right? They are violated, but you can go and say you violated a human right. At least you have that notion of violation of human right. That does not exist. We don't have a digital right, a human right commission for digital right, which we should have, by the way, because we are, as a humans now, we are physical human, but we are also virtual humans, right? So the responsibility comes from the individual, not from the institution. The institution serves the individual, not the other way around. A individual that is being educated, like in Switzerland. In Switzerland, we have referendums. We vote all the time. You want to build a new highway, you vote. You want to destroy a classified building, you vote. You vote all the time. And why you do that? Because it is important for the collective intelligence of the Swiss people to take decisions in a way that in cooperation with the government, those decisions are for the benefit of all and not for the privilege of few. So that is the thinking, right? Obviously, in order to take decisions, you need to be educated, right? So you need to educate the citizens. You have to give them the tools so they can take educated decisions, right? And this is not always the case. Some countries and some parties, they actually like to work with the non-educated people because they can manipulate them easier, right? And this is the reason why we are in the situations we are now. Now, because AI is serving not only the institution but also the individuals. Individuals are going to be smarter. Individuals are going to be able to think better because they have an AI tool that helps them to do that. And therefore, they're going to be able to get more and more ownership on their decisions. So the platform, whatever platform that is, should embed that process rather than reject that process. They should encourage that individuals have a say into whatever happens at the organizational level. Otherwise, these organizations will disappear. We say that in the next 10 years, organizations are going to be big corporations, big tech companies. They're going to be judged not by the money they make, but the goodness they create. And that's a new element. That is an intangible asset that we don't know how to measure now, right? But in the future will be essential. A company can only make money because they have developed a predatory algorithm that takes everybody's data and identity. This type of company will disappear. The new generation of companies will be the companies that they are able to maximize and unleash the human capability, the human potential, and embed that potential into their infrastructure, but not command, not control, not influence. It should be the knowledge of the masses, the one that should drive the economy, not the other way around. So it's a big fight, right? Because humans are used to be monopolizers and colonialists, and that spirit is still very much embedded into their attitudes. But it will change the future. Technology will diminish that level of control.
But let me push it a little bit back here, Carlos, because I mean this is something I thought about a lot, and I've written at length about it. And I think that in a knowledge society where we have access to answers and almost perfect knowledge to that extent that the models become better and better, obviously in theory, we as human beings have more access to take a good decision and to reflect. But if you look at how the world operates on this reactionism, that we just react to data and information, it seems to me that if you just take the state of the US at the moment, it's very binary. And even if you have an objective view of a video of something happening, you cannot come to a common ground to stand on based on the lack of trust that you as a human have. So I would just be interested in why you think it's inevitable that more and better AIs and human access to technology will lead to more reasoning, because you talked about thinking, right? And it seems to me that we have been trained to deliver answers, 0, 1, yes, no, right, wrong. And we are not trained as philosophers to reflect and think and to reason. And I think also this become a challenge when we're going to build these systems, to say that just because we think we act good or we have a perception of what good could mean, we might not have understood the complexity layer of technology. So if you think about that, you could end up in a state where advanced AIs, where machines realize that, I can only trust machines. Human beings, that's a different story. So you could have machines trusting machines and not human beings, if you know what I mean. And I think this is a technological path that it's not to me clear how we could avoid that, because I agree with you. It's like going back to the streets of Agora and having a philosopher king, or having certificates to vote, or, having people that can reason. So it's not clear that a knowledge society where we have all the data, that even leads to a reasonable decision. And I think we see that in society today. And this will, I think, only get worse once we cannot distinguish between deep fakes and reality. And once we get even more, overwhelmed by the access to technology. So I'd be curious about why you are so, I'm also possibilistic and have a very positive view of technology, but how you think it's so clear that knowledge and access to data will lead to better decision from a human standpoint. I agree with the machines, but from a human standpoint, I think there are more thinking to be done.
Okay, so there are two fundamentals on that. When I say humans will be able to take better decisions and contribute in a more active way to the global democracy, the democratic process, or electing good leaders, electing good institutions, voting for the right things, is because they have a profound knowledge on what they are acting for. So that's what you call accountability. I mean, if I do something wrong, or I should not be in a situation that I am going to excuse myself because what I saw is not what the others are seeing, like it's happening in the debate of videos and things like that. So it is important to train the humans with good data. The current data is bad data. I mean, if you go to the internet and you search for anything, you will always have 3 or 4 different versions for the same thing. It's very hard for a human to decide which one is the right one. So that's what I say. We need a tool next to us. It's like an artist. You can be Picasso, but if you don't have paint and brush, you will never be Picasso, right? So it's not the paint and the brush that makes Picasso. Picasso has the knowledge, but he has a tool that allows to maximize his knowledge and transfer that knowledge into something else. So this is how I see AI tools or agentic AI coming now. They are personal tools, personal assistants, and they are smarter maybe than even I am myself. But they will be there because they know me and they know my characteristics. They know my trust model. They know my family. As you say, we are tribal people. At the end of the day, we collect trust and confidence by the surrounding, by our friends or family or close relatives. This is the kind of chemical factory where trust builds, right? And from there you move to the next layer, which will be your party or your city or your government or your country and whatever. But it starts local, right? And if we have tools that help us to think better and avoid the brainwashing, basically, I mean, that's what I was saying. You know, there is a tool that will diminish the possibility of somebody manipulating me, because you can be manipulated by religion, by politics, by all this kind of infected data that you receive constantly, that basically builds your opinion, and that opinion is wrong because that came from the wrong sources. So that's my point. And I think because AI is going to become personal AI, attached to your identity and your behavior, and it will understand your surroundings, your nationality, your country, that they will give you totally different advice than if you are in a centralized meta type of AI environment where you are pushing down the instructions from a centralized infrastructure, which is run by a group of technology leaders, and they made a lot of money, and they don't care whatsoever about what this platform might affect in your behavior. You know, the discussion, I was talking to somebody for the Wall Street Journal just today about the consequences of removing young kids from social media. You know, Australia, United States, they are voting now to limit the age, and I 100% in favor of that, because social media is becoming like tobacco. You know, it's like the same. They repeat the same mistakes that the tobacco industry made. And now it took us a while to walk away and say, you should not advertise in tobacco, you should not approach young kids on tobacco, you should not sell cigarettes under the legal age. It took a big fight, and that fight was against those multinationals, obviously, that they didn't want to solve that problem. We are in the same situation with social media. So we won against tobacco and alcohol. I'm sure we're going to win against social media, but the problem is there, right? And in order to win, you have to have educated people and understand the consequences of social media in your 14 or 13 young kid, and how you as a parent, you should be able to take decisions around that. But you need technology, because I was talking the other day about parents, and they say, you know, this is the first generation ever in the human history where the kids know more about technology than the parents. So the parents lose their authority to even tell the kid, don't use this kind of app because it's actually affecting your mental health. And the kid will come in with a strong technology arguments, and the father will not be able to fight because the father is not educated on it. So that's why education is essential.
Now, I mean, I saw to that point, you mentioned how absurd it has become. The new trend now for influencers is sigfluencers. So they're going back to posting and getting likes for smoking old traditional cigars by posting with that. So that has become a thing because the algorithm and social media rewards it. So we're actually going from banning cigarettes to vaping, and now going back to classical cigarettes as a influencer kind of sort of economic incentive for likes and shares and followers. So I also resonate very much with that. But what I think about, and I would be curious about your take on this. So I thought a lot about like how we develop this technology. So you mentioned AGI, singularity, you know, the post-quantum world, the Q-Day. It seems like we are throwing, you know, the best we can at compute and scaling an externalized AI or a device, a technology. And when we look at us as humans, and the question then becomes, what is it that we actually are? So if you can take one cell and you can understand a cell or make a digital cell that is identical, what is the hindrance of scaling that to understanding trillions of cells? The same you can apply for neurons, and let's say if you can fix one neuron in our brain and you can start to fix defects, you know, how much can you comprehend and understand? Is there a limitation to understanding 83 billion neurons? And then, you know, if you go at it like that, the question becomes, are we more than machines? I mean, if we put together the whole chemical scum that Stephen Hawking called it, our body, you know, what is it that makes for that human part? You know, the conscious experience, our feelings, our soul, intuition, whatever you want to call it. And it's not clear to me what exactly that is. So I've been playing with my co-author, a quantum physicist, Florian Neukert. We wrote a book called Singularity Paradox, where we argue that we will eventually have these progresses that you start to talk about. We will cure cancer and Alzheimer. But at the foundational level, this is understanding chemistry and biology. So we believe that we will understand and hack biology and chemistry and then potentially take over our revolution. So the AI that we talk about becomes a part of us. So instead of having access or wiring up our brain to an externalized device, we have written about what we call artificial human intelligence. So we become the thing, we become the secure layer, become the infrastructure as an identity, as an agent. And I think that this is something that, just to open your mind a little bit to the more philosophical pondering of a technological future, do you think that we have to become technology in order to cope with technology? Or do you think that we as a collective can come together, build democracies, have good values, understand the technology, and build this super intelligence with our monkey brain? Or do you think that we eventually have to become it?
It's yeah, absolutely. I mean, my take on that, and I always say, when I speak in public, sometimes I always in very heavy technology environment, I always say the best technology ever being developed is actually the human being. We are the best technology, right? Even now, we are realizing why we die. Some people are trying to regress death and allow eternal life and this level. But actually, we are realizing that out of the trillion cells that we have, all of them, they start to die at the same time, and we don't understand why and how. What makes those cells telling each other now is the time to die and get older? So that means that whatever you're gonna do on improving is going to only improve temporarily until the code regenerates and say, okay, you gave me a new heart or a new lung, but actually I've been already instructed to die. So that is actually defeating that kind of eternity thinking that singularity and others that they can have eternal life. So it will not be with a biological structure, because biologically we have been trained, and nature is always very clever, right? Actually, quantum computer will allow us to understand nature much better. Nature is telling us you need to die because somebody else has to come, and humans cannot be eternal, because otherwise the planet will not be sustainable. So nature has a lot of the solutions that we need to apply. I am concerned about the enhancement, of people. There are new Olympic Games now for enhanced athletes, and this enhancement, the Neuralink, things like that. If that is to improve your health and your performance and your resilience and get you out of sickness and have a happier life, okay, I am in agreement with that. But if that has some, because technology always has the dark side of technology and the good side. For instance, I've been talking to a lot of people that they are implanting sensors on your brain to cure Alzheimer and things like that, which is a novel cause. And I really, but my first question is always, is that connected to a backend? Is that device connected to a backend? Do you have something on the backend that controls that device? And the answer is yes, because those devices are not autonomous devices. So the moment you have to enter into that, you are just connecting that human in the same way you connect a car, or you connect a robot, or you connect a satellite, right? The human becomes a external tool that connects to the infrastructure, which runs the AI, which runs the computational capability. And that is very dangerous. So because that means that infrastructure will gradually control more and more the human, and the human will become like a robot, like a hybrid human robot, where you lose your any influence on your consent and your decision making process. So this is the first question we always have to ask when you're developing a technology model: is this model self-sustainable within the environment that you are creating, with no backdoors, no relation to a centralized system, or are you just creating dependency, right? And for the moment, we know how to connect. That's what we can do, because those are sensors that all the power is on the back end and not in the front end. But in the future, what we will expect is to have something in you that is able, like an AI sensor system, that is able to improve your immunity system. But it should be autonomous. It should be totally autonomous. I'm working with a Grenoble company that has developed a pacemaker that you insert into your heart, that is actually electrically maintained by the pulsation of the heart, by the beats of the heart, that this gives electricity. So it's totally autonomous device. So that's the new thinking, right? Creating something that can be installed in your organism, but it's autonomous, doesn't send data outside, doesn't create dependency with a platform, and it's not treating you the same way it treats a robot or a drone, right?
But so what you're saying is that dying is a feature and not a bug. So basically, there are limitations to what we can comprehend. I mean, I'm invested in a DNA sequencing company, and we look at DNA, it's code, right? So you could easily foresee going from ChatGPT to ChatDNA. You could look at neurons. You talked about like fixing things in the brain, but what are the limitations then? Well, where is it that if you could get your sight back, why shouldn't you be able to see infrared or to zoom in or whatever, like functions of other animals? Like, where do you see the limitations to biological understanding? Where do you see limitations in compute in order not to grasp nature? Because you also said, right, with a quantum computer, we will obviously understand more. We will get new elements in the periodic table. We will extend our understanding of physical reality and biology and chemistry and physics. And once you have robots interacting with the physical world, they will not be trained on human-generated data. They will do experiments like we do, and in nature and in reality. And I think there is a huge potentiality for innovation and creation here. And I question then to you, Carlos, what is it then that is at risk, or what is it that makes for a human? What is the mensch in that sense? Because there obviously has to be a limitation. Is it God? Is it a soul? Is it something beyond physics? So I'd be curious on your take on it, because in a sense, we always use that human word, but we don't really grasp it. And I think that's a good thing. But what are the limitations then? Why shouldn't we be able to understand all cells, for example, or all neurons?
I mean, I think one take from the more philosophical point of view is, will all that make you happy? Will all that technology make you a better human being? Will you be more empathetic? Will you be more human? If that is the case, yes. But if that is not the case, no. Because what is the point to be so enhanced?
If there's an economical incentive and you think it makes you happy? That's the same thing with social media. Look at what we're doing. We think that the instant gratification, our dopamine, the serotonin, we think it makes us better, but it makes us worse because we just react. We are externally controlled and triggered to do things. And
but happiness is different, right? Happiness is when you go bed at night and you ask your fundamental question to yourself, are you a happy person or not? And it's not because you're going to be enhanced that the answer is going to be, yes, I am happy because I'm getting money. Happiness is an emotional reaction of an integrity process on where you say, I am a good human being because I have been doing good during my human life. I don't think that you can generate that, especially if you have, as I mentioned before, control on your consent. So anyway, the happiness point may be the measure on what I want to be enhanced. People, if you go and you make a survey to people and they are 80, 90, would you like to live 20 years more? It would be interesting to see the outcome of that survey. Maybe the 90% says no. I mean, I did my life. I am happy. I'm happy to die, right? So I think the enhancement process, it's more kind of people playing God for the moment, because we don't yet have the technology that allows us to be enhanced. So we are like the rats in the laboratory for the moment, right? I prefer that technology to mature a bit more, maybe 10 years more, 15 years more, and see whether that technology really applies to solve the problem that we think is going to solve, because it's not the case yet. We are now in a test mode. Actually, what is happening is that people, if you ask an AI guy or a DNA guy, each of them will give you a different path towards human enhancement, which shows that all of them, they are wrong, right? Because what is happening is that technology is converging. In 5 years' time, we're going to have technology that we don't even know the name now. Why? Because this technology is going to be the result of the convergence between AI with quantum with IoT with data with supercomputer capability. So all that is creating new things that we don't even have a name for it now. And these new things are going to be what we call the fourth now and fifth industrial revolution coming, which is going to be a total paradigm shift in what control mechanisms we have towards the control mechanisms that they are going to be emerging. My thing, I'm always a positive person, is that maybe you have the same age to remember, but American Online. Do you remember American Online? Yahoo. Do you remember Yahoo? And then Facebook. So those companies disappear, right? And while they are there, there seems to be the final thing. But these companies will disappear and new companies will emerge. What I think the new companies will emerge, and they will be the successful one, is the one that they can prove that they are helping humanity. Humanity has been here for 200,000 years. We fought against viruses, wars, disaster, atomic bombs, and we're still in control, right? If we can ensure that this is going to happen in the next 50, 100 years, then we can build a very powerful and inclusive world versus a world of an elite that they're going to be outmanned themselves because they want to live in Mars. So this is this is my approach. I have a friend, a Swiss friend, that has a boat, a solar boat, and goes around the world with that boat. It's a triangle, huge solar boat with thousands of sensors. He's putting the sensors in the water, deep dive in the water, collecting the sound of the ocean. So he's collecting the sounds of whales, and with AI, he's actually starting to learn how to speak the language of the whales. And his outcome is fascinating, because for first time humans are able to understand nature. Nature speaks, plants speak between themselves. If we are able to apply that to ourselves, those kind of nature superpowers, then they have and we lost them. The human civilization will be amazing in the years to come. That's where I think technology can help us.
That's a very positive note to end with, Carlos. I think that's a very positive and a possibilistic view of what can happen. I thank you so much for this great conversation. Maybe you can leave us with some insights on what is the near-term milestones and things that will happen with SEALSQ and also with WISeKey. What are you working on right now, and what are milestones or breakthroughs or things that we will experience in near future for your companies?
Absolutely, it was great to discuss that with you. So SEALSQ is in a very focused roadmap of creating a vertical stack from the root key trust all the way down to the computer, to the quantum computer. We announced a $200 million investment in Kubli, which is one of the leading French semiconductor quantum companies. They have developing quantum qubits at the semiconductor level, which goes very much in line. We also invested in a Chicago company with the name EEROC, which is also working on a quantum acceleration process. As you know, IonQ is acquiring a lot of companies, very similar model than what we are. Actually, they just acquired a semiconductor company yesterday, which shows that we are in the right track. We also looking into a space. I'm going to do a listing on WISeSat, which is a 100% owned company of WISeKey on the NASDAQ, early Q2. It will be something around end of April, May. We are looking now, just waiting for the SEC to give us the go ahead, which is a $200 million listing on the NASDAQ, which could go, because this is the year the industry is investing in space due to the SpaceX IPO, which is going to be the record ever, $1.5 trillion IPO. So we're going to be entering into a public market with a satellite company that has already satellites in orbit, and we are connecting those satellites with our devices. And we are also on the identity layer. We are also launching SEALSQ, which is a very interesting project. It is a $500 million token, which is going to be allowing identity of objects to pay each other. So we are creating like a machine economy where your connected car pays the electrical plug directly without the need to go through Visa, MasterCard, or whatever, by tokenizing the transaction. And we are working with very large solar projects in Masdar and many other places that is tokenizing electricity. So on that project, we team with grid companies and also companies that they are developing smart meters, like Landis and Gear is one of our partners, because we are putting wallets on the meters that collects credits from the solar panel, and then you can sell that energy to another neighbor if you want without going to the grid. So that SEALSQ is a token that is going to be released also this year. So a lot of industrial internet, what we call in Davos, we call that the physical AI. This is the word. So we are full into that now, and combined obviously with the trust model, which is unique as a WISeKey is a bit the guardian of trust on the entire infrastructure, right? So there's where we are. But the company is growing very fast. We're one of the fastest growing company in Europe now. And whatever happens there, whatever growth we're going to have, it will never distract me from my objective and mission statement, which is now 30 years old, to protect humans in the fourth industrial revolution.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Carlos.
Thank you, Anders. That was great. Super.